Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the launch of the World Energy Outlook 2015. It is my pleasure to introduce you today to our main speakers. Dr. Fatih Birol is the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. To his right, Tim Gould is the Head of Resources and Investment Unit within the Directorate of Global Energy Economics at the IEA. And to his right is Laura Cozzi, Head of the Modeling Unit within the same directorate. Fatih will present some of the key findings of this year's report, and then he, Laura, and Tim will answer your questions. Before I turn the floor over to our speakers, I'd simply like to note that the World Energy Outlook is often referred to as the Bible of the energy sector. It's perhaps fitting we are in Church House for the first time for this presentation. With that, I turn the floor over to Fatih.
Thank you, Greg, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are once again in front of you, presenting you our latest World Energy Outlook. We look at, as usual, the entire energy sector of today and tomorrow, and the issues which are related to energy, such as climate change, investments, and others. And we have focused on two issues, and I believe these are the preoccupations of everybody in the energy sector today. One of them is the rather lower energy prices. What are the drivers of that? How long they will be with us? And what are the implications of those low energy prices? This is the one area that we look into. The second one is, next month, we will have a very important meeting in Paris, the COP21, and it will have implications for the energy sector. It is the second area that we look into in addition to our usual topics. I would like to take you through now these two issues and the others in the next half an hour or so, and after that we will be happy to get your questions and comments. So we have seen this year the lower energy prices for all fuels. Oil, you all know, and natural gas as well. For example, the Asian LNG prices, we were just a year ago, about $20, went down to about $7. And together with oil, they show a lower price trajectory. And an important implication of that is now that 2015, this year, we expect the upstream investments will be, for oil and gas, will be 20%, at least 20% lower than last year. Perhaps more importantly, it will continue to decline next year, the investments. So this is the first time since 1980s we see 2 consecutive years investments are declining in terms of the upstream sector. And this will have, of course, implications for the future. Coal prices are also very low, about $50 today, and we have never seen such low coal prices since 15 years at least. And this is mainly as a result of China. Coal consumption is slowing down. So this is the picture from the, where we are in terms of energy prices. The second issue, as I said, is Paris, another preoccupation, and we think it is very important for the energy sector to look at Paris, and the governments, leaders going to Paris, look at the energy sector. Why? Because 2/3 of the emissions causing climate change come from the energy sector. When we look at the picture today, there are some encouraging signs. more than 150 countries, both developed and developing countries. They have submitted pledges, commitments to United Nations, how much and how they are going to reduce their emissions by 2030. Another good signal is the renewables are growing very strongly. Last year, about half of the new power capacity come on stream worldwide was renewable energies, hydro, wind, and solar. Also, we have seen that the major problem, subsidies, fossil fuel subsidies worldwide, is now being addressed by some governments taking advantage of the lower oil prices. Indonesia is definitely one of them, and other countries do follow Indonesia and Malaysia and others, and Thailand as well, reducing the fossil fuel subsidies. Now, these two issues, the energy prices, lower energy prices, and the Paris, give some signal for the future of energy. And our duty, we thought, at the IEA is to see which are structural changes, which are cyclical changes, and what are the implications of these developments on the markets and the policy front. When we look at the demand of energy in the next 25 years to come, global energy demand grows about 1/3, significant growth. And in the advanced economies, Europe, US, and Japan, energy demand is declining despite the growth in economy. So we see a decoupling of energy demand growth and economic growth in major advanced economies. The countries of the emerging countries are growing. A big area that doesn't get a lot of attention, but we need to pay that attention for the energy demand, is the Southeast Asia. Very strong growth of energy demand is coming from there, and Africa and Middle East do follow. Now, China will be definitely still growing strongly, but slowing down in the next years to come. I will come to that in a moment. And the news is India will be the engine of the global energy demand growth. We think around 2040, the energy demand growth of India will be close to the United States, and still per capita energy consumption in India will be only 40% of the world average. Perhaps there are many our colleagues here on the commodity front, reporters. One issue I wanted to highlight is the energy trade is moving to Asia very quickly, very, very fast. In terms of coal, 80% of the international coal trade will be in Asia, 75% of oil, and about 60% of gas is taking place in the Asian basin. So this is definitely, many newspapers need a lot of correspondence in Singapore and elsewhere, as it is now the base of the trade. We, at the IEA, we look at all the technologies very closely, where they are, what is their market penetration, and what is their economics. Are they competitive or not? And we expect that the renewable energies, the solar and onshore wind, continue to be cheaper, mainly by learning by doing. In terms of solar, we have already seen a major decline recently. Wind onshore is going to be cheaper as well. And the efficiency technologies will be much cheaper. More efficient refrigerator will be cheaper in the future. So, as a result of that, we see, in addition to a political momentum, an economic momentum behind the clean energy technologies, and the balance will be in favor of the clean energy technologies in terms of cost in the next years to come. In terms of oil and gas, even though we see that the efficiency of the technology, upstream technologies will be improving, the very fact that the more and more oil will come from more complex fields in the future, in general, they will be still highly high-cost areas in order to generate electricity. Couple of words on oil markets. So we have a substantial amount of oil in the markets today, and a key reason of that is the US shale oil growth. In the last 5 years, about half of the global oil supply growth come from the United States, together with, of course, Iraq. So we look at it, how does this production move with the oil prices? What we see is that, for example, if the oil prices remain about $50 between now and 2020, US light tight oil, the unconventional oil, will decline about 2.5 million barrels per day compared to today. If it is lower, it's about $40 for the next 5 years, it will decline about 3 million barrels per day, a significant decline. And I think this is important to see that it is, in order to make profitable projects in the US shale oil business, you need prices, we believe, between $60 and $70. But of course, US is not the entire, it doesn't give the entire oil market picture. I have told you that the decline in the investments will have implications for Canada, Brazil, Russia, and also some Middle East countries. For example, Iraq. Our numbers for Iraq this year is much less stronger than previous years as a result of the spending is going down in terms of the oil markets, and there are some security reasons. Putting these supply difficulties plus significant demand growth coming from China, other Asian countries, and Middle East, we think that the market will gradually recover, and we see about $80 oil price around 2020 to balance the markets. This is our central case. To balance the markets, a gradual increase in the price is needed, and we think around $80 2020 will clear the market. Of course, there are different thoughts in the markets, as you all know, and we therefore didn't rule out one option, which is often mentioned. What about $50 becomes the new normal? First, we look, what would it take to have $50, let's say 10 years or so and beyond, and if it happens, $50, 10 years and longer, what are the implications of that? So we look into that in a, as we call it, a low oil price scenario. And in order to see a $50 world, you need at least two important conditions. One, I show you the US shale oil flexibility vis-a-vis the prices. The resilience of the US shale oil and other non-OPEC supply need to be much more stronger than I show you in our central case. I said about $50, they are losing a lot of ground, and a condition to stay with $50 is it should be much more resilient than our central case. The second, it's not enough. Second, we need a stable Middle East with an increasing production coming from there. such as Iraq, such as other countries, and this will give another boost to supply. So if these two conditions in a normal economic environment takes place, there may be a chance of $50, and we look at it. If it happens, what are the implications? In a $50 world, oil importers will enjoy economic benefits in terms of their import bill is going down, and some of the countries may continue to make fossil fuel subsidy reform, which is definitely good news from the importer's point of view. Having said that, we as the IEA believe that the $50 long-term oil prices not only good news for the consumers. First of all, we have seen recently the oil production is coming to the world from diverse countries, and many of them are high-cost countries, such as North America, such as Latin America, such as Africa. In a $50 world, their production will be much lower, and the production will concentrate on a very few number of countries, low-cost countries in Middle East. And today, about 50% of the global oil exports are going from Middle East, and in a $50 world, this will jump to 75%, and mainly direction of Asia. We know that there are significant geopolitical issues in Middle East today, and they may not be issues which can be solved tomorrow. Some of them may be structural issues to be solved. Therefore, reliance on a very few number of countries in a region which is in a turmoil may not be the best news for the oil security, which could be a result of a $50 world. Another implication of a $50 world is that we expect that there will be less incentive for saving energy efficiency. Our analysis show that at least 15% of the efficiency savings will be lost, plus policy support for the renewables may well be more difficult to legitimize in a long-term low energy price context. So this is another implication for the low oil prices. So therefore, our judgment is the following. First of all, a $50 world would end up huge reduction in the revenues of the key producers, one. Second, as the oil will be cheaper, oil demand will be stronger, and as a result of these two factors, we think our World Energy Outlook highlights that a $50 world 10 years or so is rather unlikely. And it may not be desirable for a very long period of time for the consumers as well. Although it brings some economic benefits, it may have implications for energy security and the transition to cleaner fuels. Let me move to another important fuel, which is natural gas. And the heart of the natural gas trade, as I said, is Asia. Today, we have about 400 BCM of demand coming from China, India, and the exports from Indonesia, Malaysia they are more or less equal to each other. But we expect demand to grow strongly, and production will grow somewhat, and there will be a need for gas import about 400 BCM. Everybody's eyes are on this 400 BCM, the entire gas industry and exporters, from Australia to US, from US to Russia, from Russia to East African exporters. It's 400 BCM. Who is going to get what and under which conditions, with which contracts? And while this is a big opportunity, we wanted to highlight two major uncertainties for the gas industry and beyond. The first one is on the supply side. The growth, the rather modest growth compared to demand, comes from the unconventional gas from China and a bit from Indonesia in terms of the coal bed methane. And even though our expectation of the Chinese unconventional gas production is very small compared to their resources, whether or not we will see this growth in China is a question mark. It is likely, but with a question mark. The second question mark is on the demand side. Coal and renewable energies are squeezing the share of gas. First of all, on the electricity generation, coal is still much cheaper than gas in Asia. And in the absence of any regulation, people go and build coal-fired power plants, which is much cheaper than building a gas-fired power plant, even though it may have some environmental consequences. So one competition comes from there for gas. The second one is the solar and wind are becoming increasingly competitive, and in many cases they have the support of the governments. Therefore, gas is facing strong competition from coal and renewables, and the life may not be very easy for gas in Asia, even though we have plentiful amount of gas there. Now, China. Some of you, there are some colleagues who follow our work since many years, as we follow their reports since many years. They may remember that in the year, perhaps Javier may remember, in the year 2007, we said in the World Energy Outlook that we are going to see a major growth coming from China in terms of coal, and China may well be a coal importer. At that time, it was unbelievable, but this happened, and with all implications for the coal markets. And today, we are saying that we are approaching the end of single largest demand growth story of energy history. The era of China boom in terms of energy demand growth is coming to an end. China will continue to grow, but it is different than in the past. When you look at the past 15 years or so, as you see in this chart, energy demand and economic growth were more or less in tandem growing together. And when we look at the future, even though the economy will grow, energy demand will grow much less faster. We see a decoupling. We already saw the first signals in the year 2014, and this year, the numbers are there, and this is definitely a major story, with all implications. As when we predicted the China and coal had implications for the entire world in terms of coal markets, gas markets, emissions, this will have implications for the entire world as well. Why it is happening? There are two reasons behind that. One, China is the country with the highest or the strongest energy efficiency push for the energy sector. Second, the country is going through a rebalancing of the economy, moving from a heavy industry-based economy to a service-based economy. So this is the first big change about China. Second, when we talk about China, we have in mind always coal, and the oil. Coal is now in China slowing down and losing significant market share. Oil demand growth is also slowing down, and we see new colors in the Chinese picture. What are those new colors? Gas, growing very rapidly. Nuclear, today about almost 40% of all nuclear power plants under construction in China. And renewables, a big push. China is the champion of renewables. So therefore, in China, we are seeing two things happening at the same time. One, there is a decoupling of energy demand growth and economic growth. Energy demand growth is slowing down. And the second, we see that the energy mix is becoming more diverse. Now, India. This is the country that we focus. Every year we focus one country. This is the country we focus this year. And our main message is India is moving to the center stage of world of energy, because the economy is growing strongly. There are about 240 million people who have no access to electricity, and India is the #1 country in terms of the steel production, cement production. There is a huge push in terms of made in India, making the India a manufacturing base. And in India, we will see 600, in a very modest expectation, 600 million people in the next 25 years will get electricity, connected to electricity. So, therefore, we expect that India will be the main driver of the global coal consumption, main driver of the global oil demand growth, and not only fossil fuels. In terms of solar, about 20% of the global solar PV will come from India. We will be having a press release, if I'm not wrong, or press conference in India in 27th of November. We will elaborate these issues more in depth. The power sector, which is the transformator of the global energy system, a big change. Oil continued to go down, the share of oil producing electricity. Nuclear, a considerable growth. Gas is growing as a base load, and also in terms of supporting the renewable energies, and coal is losing significant market share. Today, coal is has the largest share, about 41%, and it will go down to 30% in our central scenario, mainly as a result of what is happening in the advanced economies, China and others. But the biggest story is in the case of renewables, and there are two stories there. The first one is the renewables are becoming the main source of electricity generation worldwide, and the main area of investments. Every $1, out of every $1 invested in the power sector, 60 cents are for renewable energies, and 40 cents, all other four you put together, 40 cents and 60 cents is renewables. Renewables are not anymore a niche fuel. Renewables became a mainstream fuel as of now. It's the first message. The second message is, in the past, when we look at the numbers, Bulk of the renewable growth came from hydropower, followed by the others. But in the future, we expect that hydropower will still grow, that the biggest growth will come from wind and followed by solar and others. So also the change of the renewables are transforming. And plus, I should tell you that the 2/3 of the growth in renewables are coming from emerging countries, not from the OECD countries. Another sign of the transition of our energy system is what is happening in the efficiency side. Since years, we talk about energy efficiency, and we wanted to see, we talk a lot, we advise the governments whether it has a direct impact on energy. So we look how many percent of the energy consumption worldwide is covered by energy efficiency policies. In the year 2005, it was about 15%, and it increased close to 30% now, and it is going to increase further in the future. And these are mandatory regulations: refrigerators, cars, light bulbs. And these will change a lot of things. For example, an oil company may think, why should I be interested in that? They should be interested in that, because a key part of the oil market is the demand. We think demand growth in the future will not be as strong as in the past. Even the economy continue to grow because of the efficiency standards. Today, about 70% of all cars in the world are subject to mandatory fuel efficiency standards. And in 2005, it was less than 50%. It went from 50 to 70 and became stronger, and will continue. Trucks, a major driver of oil demand growth. Trucks today have only 50% of the trucks are covered by efficiency standards, and there's a big room to grow. And there will be a G20 summit in Turkey, in Antalya this weekend. This will be, efficiency standards will be one of the issues. And this, many of the room for efficiency improvement make economic sense as well. Let me finish our presentation by talking about climate change and Paris. We see, ladies and gentlemen, an unprecedented political momentum in terms of finding a solution to one of our major problems, climate change. More than 150 countries, developing north, south, exporting, importing energy countries, they have submitted pledges to United Nations. I am going to reduce my emissions in 2030 by this %, and this is the way how I am going to do that. If those pledges are implemented, global temperature will increase in line with a trajectory of 2.7 degrees Celsius, which is higher than 2 degrees limit that the scientists tell us in order to have a planet which is more or less like today. But the difference between 2 degrees and 2.7 degrees is not something that you just take your jacket off and adapt to life. It will have major implications for all of us. But still, I believe 2.7 degrees is still not in our pocket, because these are pledges. They are not yet legally binding. So, and when we look all of them, all these 150 pledges, country by country, and what we see that the energy efficiency and renewables are two most important tools for the countries in order to address the climate change problem and reach their targets. And we look, if those targets were reached, how would the energy sector affected from that? And I want to give you one example only. This is the global electricity generation, okay, increasing nicely. And this is the emissions coming from the generating electricity. Very much in parallel, a very close relationship. But when we look at the future, this close relationship changes. While the electricity generation continues to grow, emissions from electricity generation remains flat, mainly as a result of renewable energies getting a bigger part of the energy mix. And this is extremely important. This close relationship ends up with a divorce, a happy divorce, because we need electricity. Electricity is something very good to make our lives more comfortable, more productive, easier. But what we don't want is this generation of electricity has implications for our environment, and this is happening now, and this is definitely a good way to go, but we hope that those pledges are cemented in an agreement in Paris, as energy sector is at the heart of the problem and therefore of the solution. Let me finish our presentation by trying to put our thoughts together. Low energy prices bring economic benefits to the consumers, but one shouldn't think that they are all good news. For example, in terms of energy security, I would say that it will be a grave mistake to index our attention to energy security to changes in oil prices. When the oil prices go up, energy security is important. When they go down, they are not important. It should be a strategic thinking behind that. India energy demand is growing very strongly, and the choices that India will make will be important for all of us, and therefore there is a need for supporting India's push for clean and efficient technologies. China is in a transition to a lower demand growth phase with a different energy mix than we had in the past, and it will again, given the sheer size of the Chinese market, it will again determine the energy markets at a large scale. The energy transition, the growing share of renewables, more efficiency is underway, but they are not strong enough to be sure that they will be with us, and there is a need of acceleration of that process. Otherwise, it is not coming to 2.7 degrees is not good enough. Therefore, Paris is an excellent opportunity. I hope to see an agreement from Paris, number one. Number two, that agreement needs to have energy at the core. Otherwise, it can risk to be a failure, as the energy sector is responsible more than 2/3 of the emissions. And finally, looking at this energy security and the environmental challenges, we think the international cooperation on energy is critical, and it has never been more vital as we think at the IEA. So, Greg, these are our preliminary comments, and we'll be happy to get your questions and suggestions.